Hello and welcome to A Mighty Blaze. My name is Trisha Blanchet. I'm the founder of Operation Delta Dog, service dogs for veterans. And I'm also a producer here at A Mighty Blaze. I do the Mighty Blaze podcast. That means I am doubly excited to host today's very special event and to welcome today's very special guest, A Mighty Blaze co-founder and New York Times best-selling author of the new Dog Mom memoir, Woodrow on the Bench, Jenna Blum. Welcome.
Hi, Trisha. I love your delivery is so measured and beautiful, and this is why you're the podcast producer. Instead of me being like, "Hey, everybody, it's podcast time," which is like terrifying. Beautiful. Everybody should listen to the podcast if you haven't already. I listen to it when I'm walking my dog and driving in my car, and it is a joy. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you. I'm not used to being on video, so you'll have to bear with me. I like the audio better. I have a face for radio, as they say.
No, my dad used to say that. I disagree respectfully. You have a face for TV and a voice for radio, which is the best of all combinations.
So for those who don't know, Jenna founded A Mighty Blaze at the start of the pandemic. What was it, April? It was right in April.
March. I think March 2020.
Was literally the start. March 2020, as a way to help readers and writers stay connected during lockdown. I'm sure she never imagined that 2 years later, we would still be here doing this. It's just a huge compliment, an accomplishment. And I want to congratulate you and say thank you for all that you've done, for all the readers, all the writers, people like me who could get involved. Did you ever imagine that the initiative would grow so fast and survive for so long, and will probably survive for much longer than this? Was it even in your inkling when you started?
No, not in the slightest. In fact, I respond to crises very quickly and just on impulse. And when I saw my friend's book tours being canceled, I was sitting here in my underwear in my apartment and knew that Caroline Levitt, our other co-founder, was doing a Nothing is Canceled book tour, like posting author videos introducing their books. So we joined forces. But I really just thought that, that I was just going to throw up some social media pages and introduce books that were pubbing every week. And because Caroline is Caroline, and she told everybody about it in the book world, and she's just like a big, generous heart on legs, basically, like that's Caroline. Yes. Within a week, we had grown exponentially, and then we just kept going exponentially, and then we have just kept going, and we're going into our third year of blazing. So 2022 is our third year, and Trisha knows this because, quite modestly, she has been here since the beginning. Like, I co-opted Trisha, I think in March, and I was like, you want to be involved in this? Don't you? And gave her no choice at all. So we've been working.
That's because you didn't want to do the spreadsheets. I was the spreadsheet.
I do not want to do that. So you started doing the spreadsheets. Yep. I was like, who wants to do the calendar? Can you put it in a Google Doc? Like, I don't understand spreadsheets. So Trisha was doing spreadsheets initially and organizing things. She was our air traffic controller for all our interviews. And then she jumped on to doing podcasts. But we have 35 volunteers working for us, you guys. Like, our own machine now. And I'm so excited to bring you new programming and new initiatives in 2022. We were just talking about this at lunch today. Like, we've got new programs coming up that I'm going to reveal in January. So thank you for helping us grow. Thank you for keeping us blazing and alive. And Trisha, can you please tell us a little bit about Operation Delta Dog, or do I need to do this for you?
I would love to. We're going to get my little logo showing here. Operation Delta Dog is a nonprofit organization with a mission. It's got kind of a double mission. We rescue shelter dogs and we train them to work as service dogs for disabled veterans. We like to say the dogs get the homes they need and the veterans get the help they deserve. So it's sort of a double mission, and we've been at it since 2013. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, believe it or not. And we have placed, I want to say the number's at 55 right now, 55 rescue dogs with veterans.
Guys, can you imagine? I just think this is the coolest idea. I didn't know that Trisha did this when I first met her. She was a novelist in my Grub Street novel workshop. And Trisha's book is coming out in 2022 as well. It's called Herrick's End. It's fantastic. It's a fantasy novel, fantasy for adults. Not that kind of fantasy. Get your mind out of the gutter, I see you people. But it's fantastic, very funny, very immersive, very gripping. And that was who I thought she was. I just thought she was a great fantasy novelist. And then I found out that she ran this nonprofit. I would like to know, I know this is an interview is supposed to be you're asking me questions, but
It is.
surprise, I'm hijacking it, just like I hijacked the bro the other day. So I would like to know, when you first started Operation Delta Dog, were there dogs who you rescued from shelters who you then like didn't want to give up? Like, did you start taking the dogs home? Like, who was your favorite dog?
Oh God, no! My husband would not have gone for that. I didn't take dogs home. Um, no, it's a matchmaking process. So the people at the shelters are amazing. They know about us. They let us know if there's a great candidate. They call. They say, "Oh, Fluffy here is a great candidate." And then we take the dog in. The trainers evaluate it. I do not do any of the training or evaluating. I take no credit for any of that. And they say, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a great dog." And then they look at the veterans that we have waiting, and it's matchmaking, because if someone's a couch potato, you're not going to put them with a dog who wants to run 30 miles every day, and vice versa. Some dogs are not great with cats, so we wouldn't put that dog in a home with a cat. Or like, everybody's got their own weird little things. Every dog has their own weird little things, and we just match them up, and you can tell. I mean, it's like love at first sight when it happens. It's like,
oh my God. Oh, am I kidding? So, okay. And how many shelters do you work with?
Many. The way it works, we're in New England, and we've done a great job here in New England with spaying and neutering. So there actually are not a lot of shelter pets up here. But what happens is they all get brought in from mostly down south or the Midwest, in our case, and they just get kind of brought up, and then we start meeting them once they get here. So that's how the sheltering works in New England typically.
I just love this. Okay, I have 2 more questions, and then I promise I will let you
Oh my gosh.
do your own interview. But the first is, can you tell us what was the impetus for you to create this? Because we all have these ideas, like I'd like to help in some way, and then the ideas go out the window. But you actually did this. You run this company now. How did you get the idea?
Well, in 2012, there were a lot of stories about veteran suicides. And it just happened to be in the news a lot that summer. And I just kept coming across it, Newsweek, Time, Boston Globe, everywhere I went. And it just really started to bother me. My dad is a veteran, and I grew up on Army bases. I was an Army brat. So it just was sort of in my blood. And it really bothered me. And I started to do just a little bit of research of what was helping these veterans, like what was causing the suicide, so to speak. And it seemed to be mostly PTSD and brain injury, which just made life really difficult to manage. And I learned that dogs can really help with that. As anybody who loves a dog will tell you, dogs just make life easier and better in so many ways. And if you train a dog to do certain tasks for you, even better. Mm-hmm. So they do things like, you never have to walk into a dark apartment because you open your door and your dog is trained to flick on all the light switches. And then you walk in your house. So it's little things like a fear of dark places, because maybe you were in war and you walked into a dark place and it didn't work out so well for you. So, it's like little things that make life a lot better. And that's what the dogs are trained to do, and pick up keys from the floor and things like that. But it's emotional support. It's all kinds of things like that.
I love that. Well, I didn't know dogs could turn on light switches. My dog is obviously slacking. He does not turn on.
Come on, Henry.
Come on, Henry is asleep right now. He's so bored with me. But I have to say that when you said dogs make life better and easier, I think that's true just by their sheer presence. Like sometimes they give us things to love and things to take care of, and they're just so goofy and silly. But I had not thought about a dog being of service to a veteran in this way by going into a situation and changing it for the better. Can you tell us one special love story between a veteran and a dog, like your favorite match?
Oh, they're all wonderful. The one that always sticks in my mind is one of our veterans, Donnie Jarvis. Hello, Donnie. He's great. We love him. He was one of our earliest victims, we'll call him. He was so brave to come in and trust us when we were still trying to figure all this out. And when I met him, he had PTSD so severely that he could not leave his house. And he wore glasses all the time because he had all kinds of vision problems from a brain injury, all kinds of things. So we actually had to go meet him at his house because he couldn't come out. By the time he was done, he had Mocha. He was matched with our dog, Mocha. He ran for selectman in his town and went door to door with Mocha, running for selectman.
Well, obviously, people are going to vote for him because he had a dog, and the dog is a good judge of character, right? That's amazing, Johnny. Thank you for your service as
My
a.
dog is literally sitting here eating my homework.
I want to see this.
Oh my gosh. Look at this. He just ripped up my papers.
Okay. Well, I hope it wasn't that. Was that like the new novel that you're working on? Dear editor.
Speaking of dogs.
Tiger ate my manuscript. We've all heard this before, Trisha. We know you did that yourself. Dog.
But back to you, miss. Back to you.
Okay.
So
now.
You have had great success with your writing and your novels, including, of course, bestsellers like Those Who Save Us and The Lost Family. But Woodrow on the Bench, for those of you who haven't seen the adorable cover, is a little different. It is a memoir. Can you tell us how you became so brave to write about your own life and your own experience? I would never be this brave. Why did you decide to write this?
That's a really good question. And actually, it's all Mark's fault, our thoughtful bro, that I was writing about myself. I had no intention of writing about myself in Woodrow on the Bench. I actually also had no intention of writing a memoir, which I have to say that way because Jane Roper, our Zeitgeist host, taught me to say it this way because we were both like, who writes a memoir? Like, you have to be like a celebrity to write a memoir. You know, it's very zha-zha. But when Woodrow, my 14-year-old black lab, was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, I spent the last 7 months of his life taking him to the bench across the street from our downtown Boston apartment. I would carry him in a harness called a help him up harness because he wasn't very mobile. And we would sit on this bench day after day in all weathers. I had canceled most of my events and I was just trying to work from home. And I thought I would be able to get work done. And no. Woodrow was like the veteran you just mentioned before. He became like the mayor of Commonwealth Avenue, and he would pull dog parents to us. He pulled friends to us who helped us, who helped me carry him back across the street, who bought us food, who bought him carrots, who brought canine ice cream that he loved. They would bring me coffee, carry his poop bags to the garbage cans, and then come and sit with us in our house and make sure we didn't get too isolated and make sure we were okay. And so I thought, well, even though I had never intended to write a memoir, maybe if I wrote about the last 7 months of Woodrow's life, which were so difficult, but also so valuable and like so tender, that I could maybe help other dog owners who were going through that same gauntlet of days. And also that I could give a love letter to the community that helped us, some of whose names I still don't know, just like strangers who showed up and kept us company on the bench. And so I wrote about the last 7 months of his life. Each month is a chapter. Each chapter is its own lesson about that he taught me about growing old, asking for help, being present, letting go, letting people in. And between each chapter is a little mortar between the bricks, and the mortar is a vignette of somebody we met.
I loved those.
Extraordinary person. Oh, thank you.
I looked how it was like in a different font, so it sort of stood out from the.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, it is. I should look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that I love. Oh, it is a different font. You're right. I know I wrote the little interstitial vignettes in present tense also to make them stand out. But I didn't want the book to just be me sitting on a bench for 7 months having people fed to us on a sort of conveyor belt, even though that's actually what happened, because I thought that might get boring. So instead, I built the sort of lessons that Woodrow taught me and then threaded the people through. And I did this by relying on my Instagram, or Woodrow's Instagram, excuse me. Woodrow had a very robust social media presence and still does from beyond the grave. But every time we met somebody really cool on the bench, I would take a photo and post it with his comments. And so that was a sort of a visual diary that helped me remember who these extraordinary people were, whether they were friends or strangers.
And I liked how a lot of them just sort of popped into your life and then disappeared, and you don't even know what happened to them. You don't know where they, and I wonder if they've seen this book and if they think, oh, that lady I met on that bench that day, she wrote about me in a book.
Maybe so. I mean, I have some cool stories about that. One is that we had this dog walker named Devin from Heaven. Woodrow was not able to walk up the 16 steps from the street to my apartment. At that point, he was just getting used to his heart medication. He did get better and he could kind of move again. But for a while, I thought I would have to carry him up the steps, and he weighed 85 pounds and I don't weigh that much. I mean, I'm not like 88 pounds. Like I'm like 20 pounds heavier than he was. and had not been weightlifting at the gym, had only done cardio stupidly. So I was like, how am I going to carry my heavy ass dog up these stairs? And he really could not get up. And so I put my hand in my backpack that I took out onto the bench with him and pulled out this business card. And I don't remember putting it in the backpack. I don't know really where it came from. And it was this guy named Devin who walked dogs. And so I called him and said, can you please help me get my dog up the stairs? And maybe can you come every day, like morning and night, to help me get my dog up the stairs?
Can you move in with me?
And can you move in with me? And the dog moms would have loved that, because we called him Devin from heaven, not just because he actually did do this twice a day, but because he was easy on the eyes. So they're like, oh, what time is Devin coming? And I'm like, back off, ladies. Break it down a notch. But he helped me with Woodrow for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, sat with us in the apartment, like talked to us in this very soothing way and kept us company, and then disappeared. And I don't know what happened to him. So he was one example. And then also
I think we should get our viewers here to track him down. I think somebody needs to track him down.
Yeah, Devin from heaven, although that might bring up some weird stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like male strippers, and I mean,
Devin, if you're out there, get in touch with Jenna, because
right, Devin, we want
to talk to you.
Yes. I wonder if I should just, post on Instagram like every day. Well, I do, but I would love to know what happened to him. And then there are other people whose names I literally don't know. Like there is one woman toward the end of the memoir, it was December. Woodrow was having a hard time standing up in this blizzard that we were sitting on the bench. It was snowing and the snow got worse and he couldn't get up. And I thought, I was trying to lift him and carry him, and I couldn't do it. It was probably the week before he passed. And this woman appeared out of the snow, like nobody I'd ever seen before. She's wearing the typical Boston in the snow thing of like a parka, a hat. I could only see her eyes, basically like gloves. And she said, can I help you? Can I help you with something? And I said, no. And then I was like, no, actually you can. Like I'm having a really hard time standing my dog up. And he had just had an accident. Like it was awful. And this very, very kind stranger helped me get him up so I could clean him up. She helped me like get ready to carry him inside. And as I was like carrying him out over the snow back toward the apartment, I turned to thank her and she was gone. And no footprints in the snow, like no nothing. She was just gone. And so I don't know if any of these kind people will see themselves in Woodrow on the Bench, but I hope so. And
I hope so too.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Now, you are a big supporter of dogs, dog lovers, dog causes, not only Delta Dog, but also I remember you supporting Lily's Legacy Senior Dog Sanctuary, I think it was called.
Yes.
Did you have dogs growing up? Are you also a cat person? What is the deal here? Like, where did this dog thing begin for you?
Thank you. I mean, before I was born, probably in the womb, because my parents were both dog people, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. I was looking at this photo the whole time I wrote Woodrow on the Bench of my great-grandmother, Jenora, on the farm in Minnesota, very stylishly dressed in this fur coat and these big boots, and exactly like what I wear. And at her feet is this very square-headed black lab who looks like my lab. So I was really predilected. And one of my favorite parts of the memoir is describing the dogs I had growing up in the prologue, because when I was a child in Montclair, New Jersey, we lived in a beautiful suburban house. It was like a lab farm. Like we had 3 labs at one point. My mom my mom once went out to play tennis and she came back with a yellow lab puppy. That was Buddy. And so, like, she couldn't see a dog that she didn't love. So we had all of these dogs, and I grew up with them, charging at guests, like with hammers in their mouths and lamps and tennis rackets. And my parents, God bless them, were such great dog trainer people, but terrible trainers. The dogs were like the Bumpus hounds in A Christmas Story. Like they were like running all over the house, like stealing, chickens off the stove and like butter and ice cream. I mean, they were just so ill behaved. And my dad would be going down the street with like, all the dogs like, heel. And the dogs were like dragging him down. Like we would watch him get dragged past the window one way and then dragged past the other way. I mean, it was like this crazy. So you would think as an adult, I might not want a dog. But when I went with my then boyfriend just to see the puppies, and that was the Woodrow litter, it taught me that nobody ever just goes to see the puppies. Like you always see the puppies. So yeah, that was how I got Woodrow. And I'm not a cat person. I'm sorry, cat people, but I'm woefully allergic. I would love to be a cat person, but I have to admire them from afar. Turtles, I don't have. I had some goldfish once. Something bad happened. Like I'm going to stick with the dogs who I can apparently knock wood keep alive for many years.
I am going to read a tiny little bit of this. So my main goal today is not to burst into tears. So I am not going to read any of the incredibly touching, moving stuff because we need
Just
to
the
avoid
boring shit. Just the boring
we
stuff.
need to avoid ugly cries today. But I am a local to Boston, and I love all your descriptions of the city. And anyone who's from around here will love them as well. And there's one thing in particular that really struck me. You say Boston is a tidal city, its population ebbing and flowing with the seasons. In summer, it empties out, the residents migrating to the Cape, to the islands, to Berkshire's retreats. In the fall, they return, along with a tsunami of students. And I have never thought of it like that before, but it really is. It's like the seasons. The city not only changes with the seasons, but the population changes. And this book, you call it a love letter to Woodrow, and it is, but I think it's also a love letter to the city. And I'm wondering what first brought you to Boston and why did you decide to stay? Because you've been elsewhere.
I have been elsewhere and I always come back. Trisha, thank you for reading that. It's always very moving to me to hear my own stuff read. I think, oh, did I write that? Like it sounds vaguely familiar, but it's such an honor. So thank you. So I grew up in New Jersey. Don't hold it against me. Was born in New York, like grew up in Jersey. My mom is from the Midwest, from rural Minnesota, where I also have a family home. So sometimes I go there to write and to become Amish. And so
you do the accent. You do the accent.
I do. Yeah, you betcha. I can do the accent with the best of them, and I have a big garden there. So if anybody wants some vegetables, canned vegetables, I can send to you because I can my own. I like turn into my great grandmother Lean out there with like a kerchief. Although, of course, my neighbors in rural Minnesota are like, oh, they're like, what's that crazy writer from the city? Why is she turning her garden over with a spade? Doesn't she know that we can use a rototiller? And I'm like, no, I want to do it like in the olden days. I mean, like
we do have machinery now.
yeah. They're like, we have technology then, but I mean, I'm like Bridget Jones goes to the Midwest. Anyway, so I have bopped around a lot. I lived in London. I lived in Wichita, Kansas. I lived in Minnesota for a while. I always come back to Boston. I went to grad school in Boston. I went to Boston University. I bludgeoned my way in, and I am not kidding. Like it took 5 times of me applying to BU for grad school in creative writing before they let me in. And I think I just wore them down. Like I kept sending these awful essays. I was in my early 20s. So I would send these essays like, writing is not about like tools and skill. It's about talent. And they'd be like, reject. And I'd be like, so, or if I were going to meet one of my fictional characters in heaven, this is the one it would be, reject. And finally, I just sent in a story and said, I hope that you judged my application on the merits of the work and please let me in. And they were probably like, God, she's going to just keep doing it. Let her in. And so finally they let me in. And I went to grad school. It's a great program. Taught me to be a much more careful, thoughtful writer. And then they gave me a job after school as an adjunct. So that was like big leagues, baby, big bucks, big leagues, adjuncting 4 classes. I thought I was hot bleep. I was teaching creative writing and communications writing and journalism, which I loved and knew nothing about, but now I do. And I stayed. And then I started teaching for this tremendous school called Grub Street Writers, which is where I met Trisha and like half the people on the Blaze, which is a writing community based on giving positive feedback to writers and getting their work published in this very practical way. And so I've been teaching there for 21 years this year.
Yes. And the thing Jenna does that's so incredible that anybody will tell you who's worked with her is it is all positive. It's not always like that. When you try to take a writing class, you try to learn something, you don't know what you're doing. You're being very vulnerable. You're putting your words out there to a group of strangers, and people can be critical, and then you quit. It's a tough thing to do. But in Jenna's teaching, it's very positive. And in fact, we have a round that we go around where you can only say positive things for the first half of the class. You can only say what you loved about the work. And then in the second half, we say things that we feel could be improved, but still in a very positive way. Like, I liked this. I would like it better if, I knew more about the setting or something like that.
Right. Constructive criticism, like saying that you didn't like something is not constructive. Saying why you didn't like it might be helpful. And then saying you just love something and that's it, also not helpful. You have to say why you love it. So that's helpful. And then we do this thing, my favorite thing, the favorite line poll at the end of the class. We go through and say what our favorite line was from the book that we're working on. It's just a joy. Like I work with such talented people. When I say I teach the class, basically I sit there and I drink from my mug and let people talk. And that's great. And I host the Zoom. So that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yes, but you give it an overall tone that makes it very welcoming and makes people want to come and encourages people to keep going and improve, which I think is very rare. I wish more people did that, but it's worked for me. I enjoyed a lot.
Okay, so I would like
Speaking of favorite line,
how can you work there for 21 years when you're not 21 yet? And you say I'm sending you like a case of scotch. Stay drunk, stay happy, just love you. And she always brings the party. That's what I say.
Yes.
Yep.
Speaking of favorite line, I have a favorite paragraph here. Your book touches a lot on the topic of caretaking, obviously, because the book is about you taking care of an elderly dog. But anyone who's ever cared for an elderly person or a disabled person or an elderly animal of any kind or anybody that needed caretaking will definitely relate to this. Not only, you present it in a very honest way about how difficult it is, but also there's a lot of humor because you lose your mind if you didn't. So this really made me laugh. Someone asked you, how is your self-care? Yes. And you say, I sighed inwardly. Privately, I found the concept of self-care, like the advice to live your best life, somewhat tyrannical. A nice concept, but often difficult to execute. What was wrong with living one's most mediocre life and being content with it? Some days you could manage only to live your worst life and muddle through. Self-care was the same. When you were caretaking somebody in failing health, it was hard to get a massage or a mani-pedi or eat 3 full meals a day. String cheese was a lot more doable. I'm doing okay, I told her. Pretty honest. And I think everybody out there can relate who's ever taken care of anybody or any dog or anything.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. It wasn't until Woodrow was gone, really, and my friends were here helping me through the first awful days following his departure that I looked at his bed where he had been sleeping, and I realized for the first time I was so in it, like I was so in the experience. And it's such a physical experience to caretake an elder or a senior or somebody who is chronically ill that it's all you can do to just get through every day and just try to meet the physical needs of that person, and then reach out to other people just to keep sane. Maybe shower, but I mean there was like so many days when like that was not a thing, and I was hand feeding him and like covered with little bits of food, and so it was not a pretty time. It was a really important time, but it was not pretty. It was not elegant. It was not about me. It was about him. And so anybody who's caring for somebody who has an illness or is about to pass, like it's really about that person. And I know that people were so well-meaning saying like, oh, have you gone to the gym? Can you get a massage? And I was like, can I get up off the floor? Like if I bathed today, like that's a lucky thing. And so when Woodrow passed, I went into the room where his bed had been and looked at the sheets and stuff. And I was like, oh, I was living in sort of a canine like hospice. Like I didn't really understand it because I just loved him so much and was just keeping him company and keeping him comfortable. But when I saw like his bed before it got taken away and before we cleaned it up and stuff, I was like, oh, I was doing hospice care. I understand that now. And that's how immersed you get in this experience. So, I mean, I was lucky if I could eat some string cheese or hydrate, like get sleep. He would wake me up a lot in the night needing to go out. Poor guy, like so you get through. And then the time for me for self-care was afterwards. Like I stayed afloat with the help of my friends who bought me food or would come and sit with me, help me carry him. Everybody surrounded us with love. Yeah. But it wasn't until afterwards that I was like, oh, maybe I'll go get my hair done. It's like months afterwards. And, who cares? That's fine. It was the experience that was more valuable.
And you had trouble asking for help. And I noticed a progression as the book went on. You kind of just accepted. I need to ask for help. I can't do this all. And then you sort of seemed to accept that, and I noticed you asking for more and more help as the months went on, and being okay with it, as opposed to closer to the beginning, you're like, no, I can do it, I can do it.
It's so funny when we were starting with Blaze, I want to say maybe the summer of 2020. So we were up and running, but there was still a lot to be organized and a lot to be done. And I said to the team on a staff call, I'm like, I really need your help with blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, God, I have such a hard time asking for help. And Mark, our thoughtful bro, was like, what? He's like, you don't have a hard time asking for help. You ask for help all the time. And I was like, oh, I do? Oh, I guess I do. That's a Woodrow lesson. Thank you, Woodrow. And so I did get much better at asking for help. And it's always easier, I find, to do it on behalf of something or someone else. So when I was asking people for help with Blaze, can you do this? Or can we, Trisha, can you please do the spreadsheets for me? My eyeballs do not work that way. That seems a little easier. When it was asking for help for myself, that is a hard lesson that I still have to learn every single day. Like I'm still a single dog mom. Like here I'm in my apartment with Henry, and every once in a while I have to say things like, I am like feeling isolated. Like, who wants to go for a hike? Or, can somebody help me with, I don't know, putting in my air conditioner, just like stupid junk. But I feel like sort of ashamed of it still, always, because I was raised to a tradition of self-reliance. And so asking for help to me seems like a weakness. I have to work on that every day.
So Woodrow helped you with that, I think.
He really did. And when the pandemic hit, because he passed 2 months before the pandemic hit, and I thought that was the worst thing that was going to happen that year. But we went into 2020, and I was like, oh, thank God, it's a brand new year. Like, yeah, I know. Oh, just had this terrible thing happen. But when the pandemic hit, that lesson came in so handy, because it was a time when I really had to ask people for help and not be ashamed about it, or I just would have gone cuckoo. And so to have Blaze there to help me help other people, and to have you guys step up and help me with that, was life-saving for me. And Woodrow gave me that lesson just in time.
And the other thing I loved, and this is going to sound weird, but you kept, you would get angry. You got angry at Woodrow sometimes. And then after you'd be like, how could I do that? But we all done that. Even when someone is sick or debilitated and you're trying to care for them, you get frustrated, you get angry. And then you're like, how could I have said that? This person is dying or ill or whatever. But so I found that so relatable. I think everyone else will as well. Anyone who's ever gone through this, the guilt and all that, you were.
True? Is that really true? It's really true.
Oh yes, everybody. I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know everybody, but I assume it's, and you had like the courage to write about that I think it'll really help people.
Thank you for saying that. That was the hardest thing to write.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I still can't read it out loud without crying, but there's that passage where Woodrow was like really not doing well. It was the week before he died, and it was late November here in Boston, like early December. It was sleeting on ice. He was very heavy, and he had to go out a lot because his digestive system was shutting down by then too. So I knew what was coming, and even still, it was such a hard thing to care for him. We'd go out. It took like an hour to go out, hour to come back in, be wet and cold, and then he was having a hard time finding places to do his business because of the ice. And it was wretched. It was like the scenes in The Little Princess, like right before, good things happen, is like, you always go to the darkest part. And that was the darkest part. And I remember saying to him one night, we were coming back up the steps of my apartment building, and I would throw a treat on each step. Each of the 16 steps, I had treats in my pocket, and I would throw a treat up. And then he would lump up the step, and I'd throw a treat up, and he would lump up the step, and I couldn't be lifting him with his harness. And he was having a hard time. And I was like, come on, dog. I'm like, you got to help me out here. Like, this is so hard, and I'm so tired. And I was crying, and I got him into my apartment, and he just like sank down to the ground and like looked at the wall. And I was like, how could I be mean to this dog? Like, I love him so much, and it's not his fault that he's old.
Right.
It was so hard. And I was talking then to my friend Jim, who was my ex-fiance, who was Woodrow's dog dad for like 7 years of his life. And Jim was like, when my mom was in hospice, I heard her caretakers talking, and one of the caretakers said to the other one, you are burnt out, go outside, go for a walk, you need to decompress. And Jim said to me, you're doing this by yourself, and it's really hard, and you don't have anybody to hand the baton off to.
Right.
So give yourself a break. But I still, to this day, have like a kernel of unforgiveness for myself for being mean to it.
I think a lot of people carry that. And imagine saying it like a human being who understands what you're saying, and will remember. And the guilt, but it happens every day. It's a perfect storm of frustration and exhaustion and bodily functions, and it's just the reality of it. And I'm sure everyone has done it in that situation, and it's like, oh, how could I have done that? Well, because you're human, that's why.
Right. Thank you, Trisha. And not beating yourself up for then beating yourself up.
Right.
Like I forgive myself for I can't forgive myself for being cross, but I also know that like it's just a process. Like there are just some things that you're like, well, that was never going to be my best self, and that was really awful. And
Right.
but it's part of the process. Like sometimes that sort of caretaking, extreme caretaking, like you're not your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. How can you be?
Right,
You just can't
right,
be.
right. You do the best you can.
Something I've always been curious about is a lot of writers have superstitions about their process. Like I have to sit in a certain chair or wear my favorite shirt or light a candle or something. Do you have things like that, or do you just see what the day brings, or do you have like a schedule for writing, or how does it work for you?
Every book is different. So for a while, I was very superstitious because it was an excellent form of procrastination where I'm like, I cannot write this book unless I get the absolute perfect desk from West Elm. And then I would get this desk.
Sorry.
Desk. I guess I'm going to get a desk from Target, A writer.
Hey, we're talking about dogs.
It's dog mom time. I totally love it. I'm so glad. I wanted to see Ryder. Actually, Trisha has this great dog named Ryder who we like run through the woods together. I should point out too that like my own dog, Henry Higgins, sprained Trisha's ankle in the pandemic. Well, he was running through the woods like a wolf, and he was like 8 months old, and he was following her dog Ryder, whom you just heard, through the woods very joyously. I was like, Trisha, look at! And like he ran into her with his cannonball head and just like sent her flying.
I went flying.
And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, Lady Trisha. I'm sorry I knocked you into the ditch. Like sprained her ankle. It was awful. But
can Henry make a cameo? Can we see Henry?
Yeah, he's asleep. I'll wake him up right at the end.
Okay.
I'll wake him out after that. But yeah, no, I used to have like a lot of superstitions that were like handy procrastination devices. But now, like every time I write a book, it's a little bit different. Once I get into a groove, I do get into a schedule. And so with my novels, I do this very immersive thing where I would go away, usually to Minnesota, to a very quiet place where I can't see any people. And write. And I would write every day from maybe like, I don't know, 3 to 7 or something. and like not really take breaks, like have one day a week to do errands or like tyranny of the quotidian, like life stuff, go to the doctor, go to
right.
So I would write, go to the gym, watch something connected to the book, do the same thing the next day, keep doing that till the book is done, come home, revise, whatever. But with Woodrow, I got up every morning an hour earlier than I usually do because I was working on Blaze then. And Blaze was like 16-hour day when we first started. So I'd get up an hour earlier and write a chapter of Woodrow or like write a scene from Woodrow. And I write with an outline. I break down the outline into scenes and map it to my calendar so I know what I'm writing on what day. And, it doesn't always map out perfectly.
It's almost like a spreadsheet.
It is almost, except not, though. It's actually understandable.
We'll get you to the spreadsheet.
I know you're going to get me. I know you'll convert me.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to read some more of your book. I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
Oh, I love it. This is it's like story. I love it.
Now, your descriptions of people, I just would smile every time. And I just jotted a few of my favorite ones down here. Someone was slender as a fingernail moon. Now that one took me a minute. And then I went, oh yeah, that little thing on your fingernail. It's like a fingernail moon. I loved that. Another person looked a little like Ben Kingsley with a leaf blower. Someone had a voice like Foghorn Leghorn and a laugh to match, which is very descriptive. Someone was tall and tan and young and lovely, like the girl from Ipanema, a weightlifter who favors crop tops with long brown hair and oceanic blue eyes. So these are actual people. I mean, these are real people from your real life, but you've made them sound so ethereal, almost like fictional characters. And I was wondering how your friends and family and neighbors reacted to being in the book. What were the reactions? And did they like the way they were described?
I mean, nobody has said anything to me yet except that they like the book, and the people who are in the book were very heavily involved with Woodrow care and loving Woodrow,
Mhm.
so I think that was really the focus, but I haven't heard any complaints yet. But the reason I'm laughing about I'm thinking about the Ben Kingsley with a leaf blower. That's our maintenance guy for our building, who also happens to be a Shakespearean actor. So he kind of moonlights as a maintenance guy, and he does amazing Shakespearean work. And I just saw him yesterday and gave him one of my few hard copies of Woodrow, because the people who are in the book get copies of the book. Like, that's my policy.
Mm.
And he said, "Oh, I'm going to go and buy like 6 or 8 more copies and give them for holiday gifts." And I was like, "God bless you. That's so great." And then I was like, "Oh, I wonder how he's going to feel after he reads the description of himself as Ben Kingsley with a leaf blower, and maybe he'll buy fewer books."
What?
Maybe he'll buy 30 more books. But I think that writing about real people obviously is tricky. Much trickier than
Right.
writing about fictional people who, can't protest if they don't like the way you describe them. And so the trick is to balance an honest description that allows the reader to really see people
Mm.
clear, like instantly and recognizably and clearly, and then also in a way that hopefully does not insult those people. So I
Mhm.
actually think Ben Kingsley is amazing, and I hope that my maintenance guy finds it that way. My friend Jacqueline, who's the girl from Ipanema, Casey, my dog walker, who's the fingernail moon. I've heard nothing bad yet from anybody. I'll keep you posted.
Well, you didn't really say anything bad about anyone. It must be such a weird experience to like go to a bookstore, buy a book, and see yourself in there, like things that you've done and said, described. It must be kind of a thrill. I
I
can't.
mean, that has not actually happened to me, I have to say, although one of
Mm.
my friends did once fictionalize me into a character named Lucy who spoke in Scrabble words. Like, all of her words were multisyllabic, like really obnoxiously long words. And I'm like, oh, that is clearly me. So it
Uh-oh.
was like a little disconcerting, but it was also kind of awesome. I think the other thing is that even the people in the book who have more difficult roles, I describe
Mm.
with a great love, because I genuinely
Right.
love these people. And so even when I'm writing about conflict, there's a chapter called Thanksgiving, and my best friend comes to visit from LA, and
Mm.
she's the only person who says to my face, "I think Woodrow's time is coming. Like, it's almost time for him to cross the river." And I was so angry with her in the way that you can only be with people you feel safe with. But I was just like,
Right.
"That's not true. How can you say that in front of him?" And I couldn't wait for her to leave. It was awful. But that was how I felt. And then I gave
Yeah.
her the book in draft form so she could read the book, and she didn't know I had been angry with her. So
Oh,
I imagine this is like a little disconcerting, but the
yeah.
fact is, like, I love her. And that was the point of the chapter, is I
Yeah.
was showcasing like her bravery in being able to say to
Yes.
me
Yeah.
something nobody else would dare say. So I hope that she took it, because we're still like, dear friends, and she's still my best friend. Like, I hope that she could see the love there. And
Yeah.
the same for Jim, my former fiance, who's in the book, and I unpack that situation a little bit, and had to give the book to him before it was published so he wouldn't be surprised. And at first he's like, "Do you have to say the thing about how I said I was going to like give you some sperm to make a baby and then drive off in my camper van, that I actually proposed this as a lifestyle?" And I was like, "I kind of do, because it kind of happened. I'm like, "This is a memoir." And he's like, "Oh, okay. I mean,
Well, at least they weren't blindsided.
yeah, it's not surprising. But he also read the whole thing and then called me, and he was crying, and he was like, "I haven't, it's just an amazing book. It's a really fine book. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud
Oh,
of you." So I got blessed by these people, and I hope they all see themselves with the love that I wrote them with.
it looks like we are almost out of time. So I want to ask you a fast five.
Okay. I
Are
think
you
we had a
ready?
question in here too somewhere, if we have time for that.
Okay.
If we can throw that up, but we could do.
Oh, here we go. We do.
Oh my gosh, sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay, we have good questions. All right, I'll do these really fast, and then we'll do a fast five. How's
Okay.
that? Okay, so Sylvia, can I quickly spot good talent in my classes? Yes, because everybody's talented. Everybody is ridiculously like stinking talented, because I vet everybody who comes into the class to make sure they're a good experience match for each other. So people submit pages to get into the class, and then I read the pages and say, okay, this person is like a great fit for the class. So that's how that works. But everybody's so talented. You'll see the books coming out next year. Jane Roper, Trisha's book, Julie Gerstenblatt, like all of the books are coming out. You will love them. how long did it take me to write this book? It was beyond emotional. It was, Anissa. So I wrote the book really fast, like in 2 or 3 months, I want to say, in the early days of Blaze. And some of the chapters were really emotional. The one that is the final chapter, December, where I had to let Woodrow go. I've talked about this in a few interviews before, so forgive if you've heard it, but I had to write that in one take, like in one sitting, because I knew I couldn't do it again. And I had to stop in the middle of it and go to the bathroom and like wipe my face because I couldn't see because I was crying so hard. So that was really, really hard, but really important.
I was the same while I was reading it, by the way. Yeah.
It's not an easy chapter, but I wanted people to know what it was like and then come out the other side and hold people's hands in that way. But the book was a very fast book for me to write, and that was a good thing. So thank you for the great questions. The best thing that happened during my tour, I got to see people. Like, I get to see you guys on screen every day. I've been doing about 50-50 virtual events and in-person events. I took Henry with me on my in-person tour to the Midwest. Henry got very spoiled, started like sleeping on stages while I was talking, like started sleeping on hotel beds. Now he sleeps on the bed instead of in his crate. So that was really fun. We got to hang out with a lot of dog parents. Just being able to hug people was amazing, and to get my hands on a microphone again, because I love the mic. I was like, oh, it's my boyfriend, hot mic. Like, I love a hot mic. Like, that was amazing.
All right, are you ready for your fast five?
I'm ready. Bring it on.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Night owl or morning person?
Oh my God, you know the answer to that. Night owl. I eat breakfast at midnight.
Signature drink?
Woodrow cocktail.
Of course.
Which is like an old fashioned with a bacon stirrer.
Heels or flats?
Heels, baby.
Favorite binge watch?
Ooh, all the old Sex and the City episodes, and do not watch the new reboot season. I watched it last night. It was traumatic. Don't do it.
Oh, I have to do it. I can't wait.
So bad. I'm sorry. It's awful.
Oh no.
You'll be sad.
Right.
Watch the old ones. Watch the old ones. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and for talking about Operation Delta Dog with me and your new book. And for those of you who don't have it yet, you're crazy. Look at that face. Look at that face.
How can you resist his face?
It's adorable.
This face. Woodrow, the magic that is Woodrow. Can I give you?
Here's my paper that my dog just ate while we were talking.
He like literally left the room. He fled the interview. He's like, I'm not doing this. I want to give a plug for Operation Delta Dog and also Lily's Legacy Senior Sanctuary, which saves old dogs at their rescues and places them in homes. So please, you guys, like, check these places out and help them stay afloat, because you're really helping dogs and old dogs and veterans. And thank you for joining us today on Blaze. We love you.
Thank you. Great to see you. Go get a Woodrow.
Many, many Woodrows.